New York, a hell of a town. New York sports have ebbed and flowed since the days of Frank Sinatra on Broadway, singing that great musical on the town. And I tell you what, it looks like positive days are on the horizon. Also, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings sitting there at 5-1. But does anybody believe that they're going to be there in the end? And probably the core of our discussion today, we are going to talk about Tom Brady and his legacy and whether or not the events of this season, what many believe could be his finally, could or not have a lasting impression on his legacy. And with me, as always, to bring it down, he's already laughing at me in the background, Pro Football Network senior NFL analyst, Mr. Trey Wingo.
Brett, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm feeling good now.
Okay.
Ask me again after you rip me a new one following our Tom Brady segment.
No, we're good. Like, everyone's entitled to their opinion, no matter how freaking crazy it is. It's all good.
There we go. That's a start. That in the business is a tease right there. Let's before we get started, Trey, I like to just remind everybody that you can be a part of the conversation here on YouTube and LinkedIn and Twitch and Twitter and everywhere else we're streaming this to. Put all your thoughts in the comments. Get them in there.
DJ Dirty Day's in there. You already said first. There you go.
And look at that. Trey with a heart. DJ Dirty Day loves you, Trey. No love for me, though. That's okay.
Somebody must. Somebody needs to.
But by the way, also, you don't just have to join the conversation here during the show. You can join us at Picket, too. If you and it calculates your ROI that when we sync it over with Caesars and with Underdog, calculates your ROI, provides free line shopping across books, and connects you with the most dedicated community of sports bettors, including us at Pro Football Network. You can directly engage with me and other Pro Football Network analysts over there on Picket. Join Picket today using promo code PFN365 at sign up, and you'll win up to $100 just for joining. And the kicker here, Trey, as always, it is completely free.
Boom. That's not a kicker. That's a good thing.
That's a good thing. All right. Segment one, man. Time to learn. This is what we do each and every single week here at Football Insiders. It is time to learn, and we're going to lead it off with our second phase of the season, true or false. And I led with it in my open, Trey. True or false, New York is a hell of a football town these days.
It is. There's no way around it. I mean, the Jets are 4-2. The Giants are 5-1. And whether or not you believe they're any good is irrelevant, because as former Jets and Giants head coach Bill Parcells once said, to perfection, you are what your record says you is. Says you are. Says you is. You are what your record says you are. So, like, it doesn't matter what you believe about how they got there or whether they should be there or not. At the end of the day, you are what your record shows you are. And the Giants are 5-1, and the Jets are 4-2. And it's the first time they've been this over 500 late in the season since 2015. So it is what it is. There's no way around it. And that's the most important thing.
Yeah, Trey, I don't know if you're familiar with Alan Hahn over at ESPN New York.
Sure, I know Alan.
So I remember a couple years ago, I was listening to his show over there, and it was late at night. And he's a vociferous Knicks fan, loves the Knicks. And he was
to be clear, I do not care about the Knicks
or basketball, maybe even.
Well, not so much. No, call me when the finals start. Yeah,
there you go.
You play 82 regular season games to eliminate less than half of the teams from the playoffs.
I know this about you. But Alan was bemoaning the fact that New York was suffering as a sports town in large part, not just because of the Knicks or other teams, but because the Jets and the Giants were in this lull. And you can, he was kind of saying the Giants Super Bowls were sort of outliers to this overall malaise that they have going on. But this year, Trey, they are coming off both impressive upsets. They both beat the Packers in back-to-back weeks.
I was about to say that's the thing they have in common right now. They both found a way to beat Green Bay.
Yeah, the Jets doing it on the road in Lambeau. The Giants upset Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Right now, Trey, in your estimation, do you think these two have a real shot at the postseason at this point, 6 weeks in?
Well, 6 weeks in, it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter, right? Like, I can throw you historically a number of teams that were great through the first 6 weeks of the season and didn't make the playoffs. But you'd rather be in the position the Jets and Giants are in than a bunch of other teams, than the Denver Broncos or the Chicago Bears. So, yeah, they have a legitimate shot at it. But the most important thing, I think, to think of from this, the Jets and Giants are combined 9-3 so far against the spread. That's their best combined cover record through week 6 since 1990. And they've each won 4 games outright as underdogs. What does that tell you? That tells you that they're finding a way to win games that people think they shouldn't, which usually translates to later in the season winning games when suddenly people think you should. You can't win squat in the NFL in September and October. You can lose it, but you can't win it. You have to find a way to get going late in the season. But right now, the Jets and the Giants are both living proof that if you can find a way to put together some ugly wins early, the confidence in your ability to win those games later in the season becomes paramount, and it multiplies by tenfold. And I think that's the best thing that Robert Saleh with the Jets and Brian Daboll with the Giants can sort of lean on. Hey, guys, trust me. We're going to get this thing done. Yeah. They have the receipts. And once you have the receipts, you know what happens? The players start believing. And, not to go all Ted Lasso here, believe. But that's an important thing. And, like, for example, on Sunday, the Giants were down 10 points to the Ravens in the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. They didn't panic. They believed they would find a way to win, and they did. The Jets were a little different scenario at Lambeau, where they snapped Green Bay's 15-game regular season home winning streak. They were sort of in front for most of that game, but the belief is there. And I can't overstate that enough. It's one thing to think you can do it. It's another thing to believe you can do it and know that you're going to find a way to do it. And that's what the Jets and Giants are working through right now.
Yeah, and just incredibly great points. And I think part of what you're saying too, right, is there's a pretty big value on the coaching that's being done right now.
Yeah, and it matters.
We said this about Dan Campbell a couple of weeks ago. That's the thing he's missing right now, is those receipts that you allude to, that young coaches and Brian Daboll are getting in year 1, or Rob Saleh in year 2. And a guy like Dan Campbell with Detroit doesn't have those receipts yet. And that impact that it has on the players' belief that this is the guy to lead us to the promised land.
Yeah. I mean, if we're throwing in Dan Campbell here, like, everybody loves him and they swear by him and they believe and they love what he says, but at some point it's got to work.
Yeah.
It's got to work.
Absolutely.
It's got to work, or it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters in the NFL is winning. Like, I've said this a million times. When you hire somebody, you say, we love his character. We love the culture he brings. We love the way he relates to the players.
Yeah.
Why'd you fire him? He didn't win enough.
Right.
So, like, all those things sound great when you hire somebody. But at the end of the day, if they don't win, it doesn't matter. Like, it just doesn't matter. I can't remember who it was. The NFL isn't a try-hard league. The NFL is a win league. That's it. That's it. That's the only thing anybody cares about. Did you win or did you lose? Did you win or did you lose? And right now, the Giants and Jets, and again, I use the disclaimer right now, the Giants and Jets are doing, for the most part, what is necessary to win. And that's all that matters. The Jets are one of only 2 teams. I want to get this straight. Hold on. Let me make sure I get this completely accurate. The Jets are one of only 2 teams in the Super Bowl era to have a winning record through 6 games, despite being an underdog in every single one of them. That's massive, because that pays dividends down the road. They're doing what Dan Campbell, to your point, and the Lions are hoping to do and haven't done yet. Okay. Like they came in with all the, the polish and the shine from Hard Knocks and all this kind of stuff. But it hasn't translated into dip. And part of that is because Dan Campbell has made some egregious coaching mistakes. When you find a way to win games, you believe you can win more of them. And I know that sounds sort of zen and hippy dippy and whatever, but it's also true. It's 100% true. When you can translate your belief into actual results, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah, it's and to your point on that stat, that doesn't change for the Jets this week. They're an underdog again, according to Caesar Sportsbook. They're getting, it's basically a pick 'em, but they're the ones getting 1 point on the road against the Denver Broncos.
How, by the way, how? I
I
have real questions. Like this is when I think the Sharps know something, right?
Yeah,
because the Jets are underdogs in Denver. By the way, Denver is terrible. Russell Wilson is terrible. He may not play this week. They paid $240 million, $235, whatever it is, for him to be terrible. The under is hit in 17 of 23 games for the Denver Broncos, which is a fancy way of saying they can't score. They are terrible. They are completely constipated offensively. Yet somehow the Jets are getting points in that game as an underdog. The Giants are a 3.5-point underdog in Jacksonville. Yep. This is where I believe somebody smarter than us knows something that they're not sharing.
Yeah, man. I was just going to say that both teams, despite these wins and everything they're putting together, they're both underdogs, both on the road this week. By the way, those lines you can find over at Caesar Sportsbook. Before we move on to the next segment, our graphics team, Trey, put together an incredible wallpaper for Jets fans this week that you can find over on Pinterest. We do this every single week at Pro Football Network. Our graphics team, and they do the graphics for this show. They absolutely crush it when they do. But you can get, with Breece Hall being on fire lately for the Jets and the winning that they're doing, you can get this wallpaper custom made by us over on Pinterest, where you can celebrate your fandom for your favorite teams every single week. We've got new ones coming out. So make sure you head over to Pinterest and check those out.
Let me just real quick before we move on, let me say something else about the Jets. You can make a very compelling argument that they're going to have both the offensive rookie of the year and the defensive rookie of the year.
Crazy.
You mentioned Breece Hall. Total scrimmage yards, number 1 in the NFL for all rookies, 4 touchdowns, tied for first in the NFL. Sauce Gardner has been as good as advertised. There are some other places and some other players on other teams that will eventually figure into this, but right now, you can make a very compelling argument that both the offensive rookie of the year and the defensive rookie of the year belong to the New York Jets.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, let's talk about the other. Let's get our other true and false here, because we mentioned this because both of the New York teams beat this team in back-to-back weeks, and that's the Green Bay Packers. Trey, true or false? The Packers are in trouble.
No, I think that's true. They're in real trouble. And look, they'll never admit it publicly because it doesn't help them, but they regret trading away Davante Adams. There's no doubt in my mind. And I hear people say, well, once you paid Aaron Rodgers, you had to trade Davante. No, you didn't. He was under contract. Like, you chose to. And they're like, well, he could make trouble. Well, how? Because under the new CBA, holding out's going to cost him money. And the last guy to hold out an entire season was Le'Veon Bell, who's now a boxer. So great. Good for him. That worked out really well for him. And, he lost $14 million that year, never got half the money the Jets signed him with in free agency, and is now fighting Adrian Peterson. So, good for him. But no, they could have made it work with Davante Adams. They chose not to because they were terrified. They were scared of what might happen. So, yeah, the Packers are in real trouble. Plus, I can tell you from people that I know in Green Bay, there are grumblings right now inside the locker room. Grumblings that Aaron's guys – or as it was relayed to me, 12's guys, because he wears number 12, are being treated differently than other guys in the locker room.
Uh-oh.
And, if you're not winning, that's fine when you're winning. In the NFL, it's the most important thing. If you win, no one effing cares what else you do. You could, drive over baby rabbits with your car. You could do a million different things. You're winning. It's all good. It's fine. But once you start losing, everything that annoys you is the problem. And the Packers have lost back-to-back games for the first time under Matt LaFleur. They had been 9-0 in those sort of bounce-back games, winning them by an average of 13 points. As I said, they had a 15-game home regular season winning streak snapped by the Jets. So everything isn't working for the Packers right now. So when everything isn't working, everything goes under the microscope. And all the things that you don't care about when you're winning suddenly become a huge deal when you're losing. So, the Packers are in real trouble right now.
Yeah, it's like we said, I mean, losing to the Jets and Giants, now look, maybe those teams are for real and whatever. But to your point, this reminds me of when, right after the Seahawks didn't give the ball to Marshawn Lynch, we started hearing all the rumblings about Russell Wilson getting extra special treatment from Pete Carroll, how that angered the defensive players, so on and so forth. Same kind of vibes here, according to what you're hearing. The Packers are losing. They're not, coming off an NFC championship loss. And here we are, all of a sudden, 12's guys.
They lost a divisional game. They didn't get to the NFC Championship. They lost a divisional game to San Francisco, to Jimmy Garoppolo and people.
That's right. So,
and by the way, to your point of what you're just talking about, like here's the ultimate. If you're a Packers fan, here's the ultimate worst case scenario. A lot of people I hear around the NFL saying they probably believe this is Aaron Rodgers' last year.
Oh.
So they're thinking like this is probably going to be his swan song after 2 straight MVPs, and he's not going to stick around for a rebuild. So in order to placate Aaron Rodgers because of back-to-back MVPs, and you annoyed him, let's be honest, when you drafted Jordan Love in the first round of 2020 when he was coming off an MVP season. So he's had back-to-back, or not an MVP season, excuse me. That was Lamar Jackson. A very good season where he got to the NFC Championship game, and they lost to the 49ers. So you ticked off Aaron Rodgers so much that he went out and won back-to-back NFL MVPs when you were ready to move on from him. You can say whatever you want. They were ready to move on from him. So he plays really well, wins back-to-back NFL MVPs, and you reward him with a really big, fat contract. But to do that, you feel like you have to get rid of Devontae Adams. And now the possibility that Aaron may walk after 2022, suddenly you gave him all that money to keep him around, and now he's going to leave, and the other second best player you had on the team is no longer there. Yeah. That's an ultimate to the organization by Aaron Rodgers.
Man, the amazing clips we're going to get from this. We got a Ted Lasso quote. We got great sound effects going. This show is by far the best out there. By the way, despite all of the Packers' troubles, Trey, they're giving 5 points to another troubled organization we spoke about 2 weeks ago, the Washington Commanders.
Are they an organization, honestly?
I tell you what. Are they
an organization? Or are they a team that plays football? Because it feels like it's the latter more than the former. I think they're just a team that plays football right now.
That's a fair point. And for those
Carson Wentz out, Taylor Heineke, and maybe Sam Howell coming in at some point, it's a mess in our nation's capital.
Dan Snyder out, according to Jim Irsay, maybe soon. So
you want to get into that? I mean, do you want to get into that or not? Let me know.
Let's circle back.
Okay, we'll circle back.
It's corporate speak.
Because I have some thoughts there, but
I know
you have other things you want to talk about.
Our last topic here for Time to Learn is the Minnesota Vikings. True or false, Trey? The Minnesota Vikings are the least dependable 5-1 team remaining here in the NFL.
Are they any less dependable than the Giants? Like, honestly, like Kirk Cousins is a better quarterback than than Daniel Jones. They have a game-breaking wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. They have a great secondary receiver in Adam Thielen. Irv Smith is a tight end on the rise. They have a running game in Dalvin Cook. I mean, here's the only thing I can say with any certainty about any of these questions. I believe there are 2 great teams in the AFC in Kansas City and Buffalo. And I believe that at this point, the Eagles, as an undefeated team, are clearly the best team in the NFC. Everything else, who knows? Who knows? It's all gobbledygook right now. The New York Times, by the way, listed their power rankings this week. They went 1 through 3, Philadelphia, Buffalo, Kansas City. They couldn't come up with anyone they wanted to put at 4, so they vacated it and skipped to T5. Like,
Ooh.
that's sort of where we are in the NFL right now. Look, everybody believes that Kansas City and Buffalo are going to meet in the playoffs, probably in the AFC Championship game at some point, depending on how the rest of the season weighs out where that's going to be. And everyone thinks it's going to be Buffalo right now. Well, the same thing happened last year. Buffalo won in Kansas City, and Kansas City at one point was 3-4. And where was that game played? In Kansas City. So it's a long stretch. Buffalo's playing great. Kansas City's playing really well. Philadelphia is 6-0. Everything else is throw it up in the air and we'll see what happens. I don't have any more faith in Minnesota than I do in the Giants, than I do in the Jets, than I do in the Rams, than I do in the Chargers, than I do in the Ravens. You know, they're all sort of there. They're all sort of in the Bengals. They're all sort of in the mix. And I don't, which is why when you ask about Minnesota, maybe, yeah, like they're, yeah, you know, but like they were steamrolling the Bears, who, by the way, are 31st in scoring and 32nd in passing offense. They were up big at home, and they let that slip into a one-score game a couple of weeks ago. They were up big on Miami with Skylar Thompson at quarterback before he got hurt, and Teddy Bridgewater had to come back in. By the way, Skylar Thompson, is it River Craycraft? Is that the name?
It is, yes.
Is there a more millennial combination? Craycraft? I mean, that sounds like a CW canceled sitcom. So, you know, I mean, I don't believe in any of these teams. The teams I believe in are the two teams in the AFC. And I'm sorry, Philadelphia. Like, it's great for you. I feel great. I'm not 100% sold on the Eagles either. I'm sold on two teams. They both reside in the AFC. The rest of it is we'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And you mentioned that Bears game for the Vikings. In the last 4 games, the Vikings haven't won a game by more than one possession in those 4 wins. And they're against teams, like you mentioned, the Dolphins on their third and second, who was the third string quarterback last week, the Chicago Bears, and so on and so forth. So, you know, we'll see what happens. Like you said, the Vikings have this propensity to get up big and they maybe look like a dominant football team. But before that game ends, they then remind you that maybe they're not a dominant football team.
Yeah.
So they at least keep you guessing, which I guess
there's only one dominant team in football this year. And with all due respect to the Eagles, it's the Buffalo Bills.
Yes. Who are dominating in historic fashion as they were to start the season. Okay. We mentioned, by the way, the different point spreads, at least for the Packers giving 5 points. Both the Giants and Jets are road dogs, another Ted Lasso reference, Diamond Dogs being there. But they're road dogs. All of that is found on Caesar Sports. As you know, Trey is our resident Caesars. He's their chief trends officer. I want to get your title right. And brand ambassador for them. And you guys know, if you follow me on Pickett or any of these other places, that I only bet. The only sports book I bet at is Caesars. And if you haven't bet there yet, do so now with us. Go place your first wager. If you lose, the great thing here is you're going to get 100% of your stake back as a free bet, up to $1,250. That's an incredible number, higher than anywhere else I've seen. And win or lose, you'll get 1,000 reward credits and 1,000 tier credits. And all you got to do to redeem this offer is use promo code PFNCZR when you place your first bet at Caesar Sportsback. That is promo code PFNCZR. So let's get into this, Trey, because I know you're ready to rip my head off here. So I'm gonna set the stage. I'm gonna give the premise. Okay. And then I'm going to slowly back away and get educated.
No, bro, like, be confident in your opinions. Like,
well, look, I will preface this by saying that I'm known for being a Tom Brady truther. In the past, I have often chalked a lot of his team accomplishments up to the team versus him. But
that's because teams win games.
That's right.
Wins and losses are not a quarterback stat. Like, I've said that 100 million times. Teams win games.
That could be found in your Twitter bio. But I will say this, that there is no denying his accomplishments and what he's done and the legacy he has built. So we talked a little bit about this a few weeks ago, and the leaving training camp. the not practicing on Wednesdays, the report that he missed the walkthrough on Saturday to go to
It's not a
Robert
report.
Kraft's
He
wedding.
did. He missed
He
the
did.
walkthrough to go to Robert Kraft's wedding.
Missed the walkthrough. The report that he, recently, or I guess he did this too, this is a direct quote, that he compared going to training camp to being deployed in the military. These are all things that have happened in the last 2 or 3 months. And I believe, and maybe this doesn't play out over the next 20, 30 years, but I believe that the events of this season, what could be his final season, Trey, have the potential to leave a stain on what, to this point, was a stellar, pristine, squeaky clean legacy. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Are you? Are you really interested? You sure
Always.
you're interested?
Always.
What the hell is wrong with you? What the hell is wrong with you? Like, do you think 10 years from now, assuming Tom Brady is retired in 10 years and he's not playing at 56, do you think when people interview Tom Brady, they're going to say, joining us now is Tom Brady, the guy who messed up the team in 2022 by not going to Wednesday walkthroughs, by skipping a Saturday practice to go to Robert Kraft's wedding and took 11 days out of training camp. He joins us now. Are they going to say, and joining us now is Tom Brady, the guy who has 7 Super Bowl rings, who's only the second quarterback ever to win Super Bowls with 2 different teams, and has every single possible passing record you can ever hold? What's the sentence they're going to introduce him with? Have I stunned you into silence? Or is your internet not working again?
No. I'm here. I muted myself to make sure that I gave you.
So I'm asking you, which how are they going to introduce him 10 years from now?
It will absolutely be as a 7-time Super Bowl champion.
Yeah. So, okay, look, like I love these, and you're not the only one to have these kind of conversations. If somebody has a bad season, it's going to ruin his legacy. No, it's not. It's going to be an aberration. It'll be an asterisk. It'll be, something on the side. But at the end of the day, Tom Brady's legacy is 7 Super Bowl rings, the most passing yards, the most passing touchdowns, the most incredible performances in Super Bowl history. That's going to be his legacy. Right now, rightfully so, and you and I have talked about it on this show, he's trying to play while being retired. Okay? That's 100% true. And he's not winning off the field, and he's not really winning on the field. So it's hurting both of those things. But when you bring up the legacy discussion, it won't mean dip in 5 years.
Yeah, I tell you what, I can't disagree with that because I agreed with you. And they will introduce him as a 7-time.
Wait, I love that. I can't disagree with you because I agreed with you.
Yeah, see how he's like that circular logic there. But what I would let me phrase it a different way. Me personally, as my peak fandom years have been Tom Brady's entire career. I will remember that the legacy that he cultivated, that he publicly put out there, the TB12 brand, the look at me and my family reality show on Facebook, Mr. Perfect. I will remember that was not true. And that what he did this year.
That was not true this year.
That was not true this year.
Right.
But my point here is like, we always were okay with him spitting and screaming in the faces of referees on bad calls and slamming Microsoft Surface tablets, and we dubbed him the ultimate competitor. And this is not the ultimate competitor. But that was a mantra that he very happily accepted and ran with and enveloped into his persona. But that's not who this guy is. You've said this to me privately about somebody we won't name here, but this Tom Brady would hate, the Tom Brady we've known, the New England Tom Brady, would hate this Tom Brady.
Probably. Yeah. Everything you're saying is correct. But at the end of the day, you're asking me about his legacy. And his legacy is his entire career. It's not just this year.
Yeah.
If his legacy was just this year, then I think you have a very compelling argument. But at the end of the day, like I said, 10 years from now, assuming he's not playing, they're going to weigh his career. And there's all this great stuff over here and a bad 2022.
Yeah.
The scales are going to be weighed very heavily in his favor.
Yeah, and for everyone watching, by the way, if you expected the two of us to start screaming at each other and
Not
go
what we
into
do.
the whole, that's not a thing. But I do appreciate that, because you're right. I mean, look, on any scale, 21 years or 22 years of one thing versus 1 year or not even 3 months of another is always going to be outweighed. I guess as a fan of the game, I'm just disappointed to see that in what could be his final season. This is how it's playing out. I feel bad. I guess I feel bad for him.
That's accurate, Brett. That's
Yeah.
accurate. I want to be 100% clear. Like that, when he was that clip showed of him on Sunday in Pittsburgh when he was ripping his offensive line. Like I said, if I'm one of those offensive line, I'm like, bro, maybe you should have been here for the walkthrough. Maybe you shouldn't take 11 days off in training camp. Maybe you should be here for install days on Wednesdays. Yep. All of that's 100% valid. It's 100% valid and 100%. A reason to criticize him this year. But when you throw the legacy word out there, it's not about 2022. It's about his entire career. And his entire career, like Peyton Manning, his final year in the NFL, couldn't play dead in a Western. He was that bad. Yeah, I think he had 9 touchdown passes and 17 interceptions. 9 and 17. Yet somehow the Broncos won a second Super Bowl with Peyton as a starting quarterback. He was the first guy to do it. And people are like, oh, his legacy has changed. I'm like, you're ridiculously stupid if you think that way. Yeah. Okay. Like he had, there are 22 starters for the Denver Broncos in 2015. Peyton Manning was the 37th best player in that Super Bowl 50. Okay. Like there were special teams players out the gazinga that played better than Peyton Manning did in that game. That's so true. If your perception of Peyton changes because of that second Super Bowl, then I don't want to talk to you. Okay. Yeah. So his legacy was established before the dreck of 2015, which ended up with him winning a second Super Bowl. Whatever happens in 2022, like Peyton Manning is everywhere, like literally, like he's doing the Manning Cast, he's doing the college quiz show, he's doing these commercials, he's doing all these podcasts, he's doing all of this. None of this has affected his legacy because of what happened in 2015. And nothing is going to affect Tom Brady's legacy because of I'm retired while playing football 2022 season.
Yeah. Well, look, we'll definitely put on a bow on it there. I agree with you. It's leaving a bad taste in my mouth, and I think
that's a fair thing. Yeah. That's a fair thing to feel. And if I'm a Buccaneers player, I'm going to be very curious to hear what happens in the offseason if he does retire and what they had to say about how he handled his last year.
Yeah.
And those are fair things, but his legacy is not going to be in question.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. That's a good point. Hey, look, we typically now would move to our Super Smash QB matchup, but before we do, there was some news this week. Colts owner Jim Irsay, coming out of one of the owners' meetings, I think it was yesterday, saying that he can foresee a scenario in which Dan Snyder is removed as owner of the Washington Commanders, and is troubled by the allegations and the ongoing investigation. Of course, Dan Snyder responded by saying Jim Irsay was speaking out of pocket and needed to wait for the conclusion of the investigation, so on and so forth. Trey, this is a mess of a situation.
It's been that way for a while in Washington. Like nothing's changed. Like Washington's FedEx Field is the only place where the stadium will poop on you, which has happened on more than one occasion when the sewage system backs up and fans of the team actually get human waste dumped on them. Okay. What Irsay said actually was there's merit to the consideration of him being removed, which was a bold statement by Jim Irsay.
Yeah.
Who's had his own issues on a bunch of different levels. I can promise you he's not the only NFL owner that feels that way. The question is, how many are going to put their name on the dotted line? How many are willing to say, I'm for the active removal of one of our own? And I want to be clear.
What is that number, Trey? That's
24, 75%. You have to have 24 of 32 teams 32 team owners. It's 20, and the Packers are always weird. So you have to say 31 owners and the Packers because it's a entity owned by a bunch of different people. So you need 24 of them. Jim Irsay's one. I guarantee you there's way more than Jim Irsay that feel that way. But how many of them are willing to stick their necks out there like that, wondering, well, will I be next if things go poorly? And let's be clear, Daniel Snyder is a terrible owner. Like, he's a terrible owner. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. They've had very little success on the field. That he can't get funding for a new stadium. Like, funding for an NFL stadium is like the easiest thing in the world to do. Like
Tennessee just Titans.
Yeah, they're going to get a dome stadium in Nashville with all kinds of public funding. And because Daniel Snyder is such a train wreck, they can't get public funding from Virginia, Maryland, or the District of Columbia. So
they have three choices. They have three options.
Yeah, and none of them are working. So he's a terrible owner. And he's managed to not only lose on the field. There's not a single coach, by the way. There's not a single coach in Dan Snyder's tenure as the owner of the team that has a winning record. Not one. Think about that. There's not one coach that he's employed that left with a winning record as the head coach of the Washington Redskins football team, Commanders as they are now. Not one. Okay. He is an awful owner. But I also believe the Seth Wickersham story on ESPN, where he is like, okay, I'm going to start. If you want to get rid of me, I'm going to make it uncomfortable for you. Like the line in The Godfathers, going to the mattresses. He will go to the mattresses. You know, he put out that statement. There's nothing to this report. Bull bleep. He's got it, and he knows that if he's going down, he's taking everybody else with him. So if the owners of the other 30 owners plus the Packers, if they want to get rid of Dan Snyder, they have to be prepared to go through some stuff. And I don't know how many of them are prepared to go through some stuff.
Yeah, last year when John Gruden had that whole email thing, people forget that wasn't a John Gruden thing. I mean, it ended up becoming that, much to the NFL's delight, I think.
It was a Washington football team investigation.
That's right. And
he caught a stray.
Yeah, and we had the pleasure of sitting down with your good buddy, someone I've come to get to know, Andrew Brandt, who really enlightened me to guys like Bruce Allen and the behind the cloak and dagger activities that go on behind the scenes of the NFL. And I said this on that podcast, and this is a More Than Football episode you guys can go listen to on Apple or Google. It's the episode with Andrew Brandt. But I said it towards the end that after hearing him talk about what really happens behind closed doors with these owners and the presidents and all these different things, I felt dirty. It felt like a House of Cards situation, House of Cards episode. And here we are, Seth Wickersham coming out with a great story, by the way, over on ESPN, that an NFL owner is actively collecting dirt on his colleagues, his partners. That's what they are, right, Trey? They're 32 partners.
Business partners.
Or 31 partners in the Packers.
Right.
That he's hoping to use in the event that they try to remove him. This is I can't believe it's not a bigger story, but what we know about the NFL and the way they handle these types of situations that put a black eye on the shield, I am not surprised that it's not a bigger story because they're controlling it right now.
The NFL is always going to bank on the fact that whatever bothers you. By the way, when was the last time anyone mentioned the words Deshaun Watson?
Great point. And another lawsuit just came out on that just a couple days ago.
When was the last time anyone mentioned the words Deshaun Watson with any outrage? Yeah. The NFL will always bank on there will be something that will take your attention away from the thing that you find so abhorrent. And nobody's talking about Deshaun Watson right now. Nobody. And that's exactly how the NFL is hoping this whole thing plays out with the Washington Commanders and their ownership.
Yep, we'll certainly keep an eye on it. Who knows? Maybe something else comes out and this fills our second segment for next week's show. The problem with, but on a happier, more cheerful note, let's move on to our Super Smash QB matchup of Week 7. Let's see what the selector has for us. All right, Trey. Usually our QB matchups are like elite quarterback going up against another elite quarterback. I don't know that that's the case here, but it is the
It's
best
not.
of the matchups, and it is a Super Bowl rematch from just a couple years ago when Patrick Mahomes did win his first Super Bowl. Jimmy G, not supposed to be the starter this year, supposed to be Trey Lance, who got injured, but he is in the role for the 49ers. And Patrick Mahomes coming off the loss against the Bills. What are your thoughts on this matchup here?
Well, a couple of things. I want to know if Nick Bosa is playing first and foremost, right? Like we always, the NFL, because they do this, and I disagree with it vehemently.
There you go.
That they attribute wins and losses to quarterbacks. Let me just throw a number out for you. Nick Bosa was drafted by the 49ers in 2019. In games that he has played since the 2019 season, the Niners are 27-13. In the 15 games that he has not played, the 49ers are 5-10, including a 14-point loss this weekend to the Atlanta Falcons. So, like, you can attribute a win or a loss to almost anybody based on, empirical data and statistics. So I don't know why we always do it with quarterbacks. Like if Nick Bosa plays, the San Francisco 49ers have a chance. If they don't have Nick Bosa, I don't think they have a chance because Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, since he became the starter, you know what his record is against NFC opponents?
I don't. Tell me.
13-0.
Wow, really?
Never lost. He has never lost. In fact, put that in some historical perspective. 13 interconference wins by the Chiefs in a row is the second longest streak in NFL history in interconference games, second only to the Patriots from 2005 to 2009, who won 17 games in a row against the NFC. So that's what we're looking at. Wow. Now, the only good news for San Francisco that we can throw in this situation is that they're playing the Chiefs in October. And you're saying to yourself, why does that matter? Let me explain. There's not enough time. Let me sum up. The Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes as their starter are 12-7 in the month of October. They are 42-8 in September, November, December, and January in regular season games. Put simply, almost half of Patrick Mahomes' regular season losses have come in the month of October. And I talked to a buddy of mine and our friend Mark Schlereth. I said, why do you think that is? Because it's just a weird thing. And he says, I get it, because the Chiefs are super talented. And when the season starts, those first few games, you want to go out there and play your best. You want to do this. You want to do that. He's 13-2, for example, in the month of September, including the loss this past couple of weeks ago against the Colts, when they literally tried their hardest to give the damn game away. And the Colts finally said, we'll take it. So that's that scenario. And then you get into the lull of October, and the Chiefs know they're going to the playoffs. The Chiefs know that they're probably going to win that division. They get a little bored. And then they get a little lackadaisical. And then November and December comes around. They're like, holy crap, we got to get our bleep together. And they go on these incredible streaks every year. So the only good news for San Francisco is that they're getting the Chiefs in October. And with the Packers loss to the Jets on Sunday, the Niners had the longest active home winning streak in the NFL, 6-0 at Santa Clara Stadium. Or at Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, rather. So that's about all I got. But other than that, I fully expect the Chiefs to bounce back from the loss Sunday to Buffalo. And by the way, can I just go into a couple of things about that game?
Yeah,
the Bills and the Chiefs.
I think it matters. I think it's relevant to what we might see from them this week.
I've said all along, the only team that can beat the Chiefs is the Chiefs. The Bills are incredible, okay? Josh Allen played an amazing game. But on the first drive, they had a turnover, the Bills did, in the lateral between McKenzie and Josh Allen, so they didn't score. Chiefs march right down the field, and what happens? Mahomes throws an interception in the end zone. When they should have gotten at least 3 points and taken an early lead. Okay? Then late in the half, with the Chiefs leading 7-3, and no one talks about this, but it drove me crazy, crazy. It's a incomplete pass on first down when the Bills are backed up to their 1 yard line.
Right.
Or 2 yard line, rather. And then on second down, Josh Allen escapes a safety sack in the end zone and runs out to the 1 yard line. And so it's now 3rd and 12. And Andy Reid calls a timeout with 1 minute and 18 seconds left. And I'm watching him, and I'm saying to this in myself in real time.
Who, Andy or Patrick?
No, Andy Reid calls a timeout.
Yeah.
Because he's thinking, I get the ball back. We
Right.
can score right before the half. And I'm like, get the ball back, then call the timeout.
Right.
And of course, what happens? They go on to score a touchdown as Gabriel Davis goes one-on-one with the rookie corner Watson and burns him for a touchdown in the corner of the end zone with 16 seconds to play. If Andy Reid doesn't call that timeout, they don't have that opportunity to score with 16 seconds to play. Now, yes, the Chiefs did it again. Harrison Butker hit a 62-yard field goal to tie it at 10. I get that. That's great. But sometimes it's the little things that make the biggest deal. And as Andy Reid was calling that timeout, I'm like, why don't you make sure you get the ball back first and then use that timeout? Because you're allowing the Buffalo Bills to have the opportunity to score by giving them more time on the clock. And I know people say, oh, they were on the 2 yard line. Well, the week before they were on the 2 yard line on the first drive of the game, and Josh Allen hit Gabe Davis on a 98-yard touchdown pass. So, like, you've seen them do this before.
Yep.
Andy Reid outthought himself and cost his team 7 points in that game.
Yeah, and look, we also know historically, going back to his days in Philly, Andy Reid has had some clock management challenges. So that's not something that's crazy, but yeah, I'm with you, man. I think we both are big believers that the Chiefs are a phenomenal football team. But that October record and our buddy, Stink's explanation of it makes complete sense. Complete sense.
He has 17 interceptions in the month of October, 5 more than any other month.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Trey, if you follow me on Twitter or you follow me on Twitter, but for those of you who don't, you know that I've been doing a lot of betting and using behavior science and a betting model. My model has San Francisco winning this game, believe it or not. So we'll see what happens. And
they have so many injuries on defense. They have so many injuries.
They do. And that's a great point that you started out with. Is Nick Bosa going to play?
Yeah.
Because we've seen Max Crosby 2 weeks ago. We saw Von Miller.
Von Miller changed that game. Changed that game.
Andrew Wiley is amazing. He comes in a pinch. He's a pro's pro at right tackle.
But he's not Von Miller.
And he's definitely not the Chiefs' long-term answer at that right tackle position. So we'll have to we'll see where that goes. Trey, we got a little bit of time just for a couple questions from the audience. One question is, what are your thoughts on the Ravens signing Deshaun Jackson? Does this hurt or help Lamar Jackson?
Well, I don't know how it hurts him, and it potentially could help him. Like, Deshaun Jackson is a walking big play. I get it. It didn't work out with the Rams last year, and I thought that would. We actually had him on the recent Half Forgotten History podcast episode. We talked about this. I don't know how it hurts him, and it could potentially help him. It's what I call this signing is a low risk, potentially high reward situation. If it doesn't work out, so what? Like, you have Rashad Bateman, you have Devin Duvernay, and you were hoping to add to that. But I don't know how it hurts. And it's a potentially low risk, high. Like, it's like when Albert Haynesworth was signed by the Patriots. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Like,
flashback.
There was no downside to it. If it worked out, Bill Belichick's a genius. If it doesn't work out, cost him nothing. And, it was a shot in the dark.
Absolutely.
So there's no way it hurts. It can only potentially help. It either helps or it changes. It doesn't hurt in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And I think, we know the answer to this one, but how much the Cardinals offense has been abysmal. 11 points last week, 3 games of the 6 they've played. They've scored less than 3 touchdowns, 2 of those games less than 2 touchdowns.
They scored 9 last week?
I thought, they lost 19-9 to the Seahawks.
19-9, yeah.
So 2 games not even scoring 2 touchdowns, not the offense they imagined by bringing in Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. Got to imagine Hopkins hopefully will come back and help them.
Yeah, which makes the trade for Robbie Anderson really strange.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they gave away very little for him, a seventh and a sixth. But you also lost a starting offensive lineman in that game. So if you know DeAndre Hopkins is coming back, why are you expending any draft capital for Robbie Anderson? Like Robbie Anderson is a lesser version of DeAndre Hopkins. Like he's not going to run every route for you.
Yep.
He's a lid lifter. He's a bust the defense player. Well, that's literally who DeAndre Hopkins is. So I thought that entire thing was very questionable by the Arizona Cardinals. DeAndre Hopkins coming back is absolutely going to help them. But Call of Duty also comes out this week, and it's a short week for Kyler. So,
Oh man, I tell you what, we haven't brought him up once and not brought up Call of Duty. That just shows you how ingrained that is as a part of his early legacy, we'll call it. Hey, before we sign off here, another thing that our producer Brian, sent over. You know, the other thing we're not talking about now, Trey, concussions. All of a sudden, Tua, and he's starting on Sunday Night Football this week, and we're not talking about.
I'm very concerned. Just so you know, like I hope it all goes well for him, but that was second impact syndrome in that Week 4 game against the Bengals. I hope he's completely recovered, and I hope nothing happens. But I'm not going to lie to you. I'm going to be watching that game with all my fingers crossed that things go okay for Tua.
And just to put it quickly into further perspective, these are not the first two concussions of Tua's career. People forget the hip injury that knocked him out of Alabama before he was drafted. He suffered a concussion on that play too, broken nose and a concussion. And he in a press conference today, Trey talked about not remembering the getting carted off the fild against the Cincinnati Bengals. So very scary stuff. Hopefully it all works out. We talked about a lot today. Want to thank all of you. Want to remind you all that the other thing you could do regarding Patrick Mahomes and Jimmy Garoppolo is go play Underdog Fantasy. Play their higher or lower game. You can get higher or lower Patrick Mahomes passing yards at 290.5. And you can get higher or lower Jimmy G passing yards at a paltry 239.5 passing yards. That's Underdog Fantasy. Go do that. When you sign up for Underdog, make sure that you use code PFN. Take the higher or lower in those games and get up to $100 deposit bonus and a free month of PFN Pass when you deposit at least $10. I am Brett Yarris. He is the one and only Mr. Trey Wingo, and we are Pro Football Network's Football Insiders. We will see you next week, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. See ya.